What if falling in love meant risking everything, your job, your family, even your safety? Would you still choose love? In Japan, where same-sex relationships remain largely invisible, Shiba and Koji didn't just fall in love. They stood up, they spoke out, and they built a life together. Their wedding wasn't just about vows, it was a revolution in a society that told them to stay silent. At Rainbow Vibes, we believe love can rewrite the rules. So stay with us and ask yourself, what would you risk for love that dares to be seen? What if the love of your life had been standing next to you for years, and you didn't even realize it? Before they became one of Japan's most talked about LGBTQ+ couples, before the viral wedding photos, before the interviews and the fans, Shiba and Koji were just two ordinary college students trying to figure out life. Shiba, real name Shibata, was the extrovert everyone knew. Loud, charming, a little chaotic, the type of guy who could make an entire room laugh without trying. His laugh was contagious, his energy was magnetic, and underneath all that humor was someone with a heart that loved fiercely, but also feared rejection more than he'd ever admit. Koji, full name Koji, was his opposite in almost every way. Quiet, analytical. The guy who preferred sitting at the corner table, headphones in, head buried in a book. Koji didn't speak much, but when he did, it mattered. Every word felt intentional. Every glance carried more meaning than a full paragraph from someone else. Their first meeting? Far from romantic. Thrown together for a group project in one of their general education classes, Shiba was late to the first meeting. Koji was already there, notebook open, coffee in hand, tapping his pen in annoyance. Shiba burst in with apologies and jokes. Koji responded with a silent stare. But as the project dragged on, something shifted. Between brainstorming sessions and last-minute study nights, the two found themselves gravitating toward each other. Koji discovered that behind Shiba's endless talking was a sharp mind and a heart that cared deeply about others. Shiba learned that behind Koji's quiet exterior was someone observant, funny in his own dry way, and surprisingly patient. They started hanging out more, first in groups, then just the two of them. Late-night convenience store runs for snacks. Long walks through Shibuya, talking about music, movies, dreams, and sometimes fears they couldn't quite name. On the surface, they were just friends. But underneath, something unspoken started to grow. There were moments, subtle but powerful. Like the time Koji stayed up all night helping Shiba cram for an exam, even though he had one the next morning too. Or the way Shiba's eyes lingered a little too long whenever Koji laughed. Really laughed. That rare, unguarded kind of laugh. But still, neither of them said anything, because friendship felt safe, and crossing that line, especially in a society that barely acknowledged LGBTQ+ relationships, felt terrifying. The turning point came one cold, rainy night after graduation. They had met up for dinner at their favorite ramen shop. Nothing fancy, just familiar comfort. On the walk home, sharing one umbrella, shoulders brushing, hearts racing, they both felt it, that pull, that question hanging in the air. Back in Shiba's small apartment, with city lights flickering outside the window, they sat in silence for what felt like forever. Shiba, never one to hesitate, finally broke the moment with a shaky laugh. "This is stupid, but I think I'm falling for you." For a beat, Koji said nothing, just looked at him, eyes soft as if he'd been waiting for this confession all along. Then, in typical Koji fashion, he replied with 5 simple words, "You're late to notice." What followed wasn't some magical movie montage. There were awkward talks. There were doubts. There was fear. They worried about family reactions, about coming out, about whether their feelings were real or just loneliness playing tricks. But love, real love, pushed through all. They became a couple quietly at first. Private moments stolen between busy schedules. Late-night texts that ended with heart emojis they'd never dared send before. Slowly, their closest friends noticed. Then, their families. Then, their growing online audience. Fast forward a few years, and their relationship blossomed into something far bigger than they ever imagined. Together, they launched a YouTube channel, part lifestyle, part LGBTQ+ visibility, part slice-of-life chaos. Fans from across Japan and around the world tuned in, not just for the laughs, but for the rare chance to see two men living openly, lovingly, and unapologetically in a society where so many LGBTQ+ stories stay hidden. Today, Shiba and Koji are more than content creators. They're advocates, role models, and living proof that sometimes the greatest love stories start with friendship, survive fear, and grow into something brave enough to change not just 2 lives, but thousands. Do you believe that the right person for you could be someone standing right beside you right now, waiting for you to notice? What happens when the person you love becomes the secret you're most afraid to share? For Shiba and Koji, falling in love wasn't a sweet montage of first dates and carefree laughter like you see in romantic comedies. It was a slow, aching buildup, a quiet war between heart and fear, played out in stolen glances, half-finished sentences, and moments that felt almost too precious and too risky to be real. Yet, every time their hands brushed, or their eyes lingered just a second too long, reality hit hard. They were 2 men falling in love, in a country where such love stories were rarely told, let alone celebrated. Japan, with its layers of social expectations, its invisible rules about what love should look like, wasn't exactly kind to people like them. This wasn't just about homophobic comments from strangers on the street. It was about the subtle, relentless pressure to blend in, to conform, to not cause waves. Holding hands on a busy sidewalk? Not a chance. Leaning in for a kiss at the park? Unthinkable. Even sitting too close together on a train could invite side eyes and whispered judgments. So they became experts in invisibility, mastering the art of pretending to be just friends in public, while their hearts told a completely different story. Their dates were carefully planned missions, choosing out-of-the-way restaurants with dim lighting, or taking long drives to places where no one knew their faces. They joked about it sometimes, calling themselves love ninjas, slipping through the cracks of society just to steal a few moments together. But beneath the humor was exhaustion. The weight of constantly looking over their shoulders, of censoring their affection, of living 2 parallel lives, one for the world and one for themselves. And then came the decision that would change everything: coming out. For Shiba, it started with small confessions to close friends, testing the waters, dropping casual comments like, love doesn't always look how people expect it to. For Koji, it was late-night rehearsals in front of the mirror, practicing how to explain, in the most non-threatening, parent-friendly language possible, that the person he loved just happened to be a man. But slowly, through uncomfortable conversations and more than a few teary nights, something unexpected happened. Cracks began to form in the wall of resistance. A sister quietly offering support, a mother leaving out both their favorite snacks during a visit, a father showing up at their apartment with groceries and no questions asked. It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was a start. Their circle of friends was a mixed bag too. Some embraced them without hesitation, planning movie nights and game hangouts where they could just be themselves. Others drifted away, leaving behind awkward text conversations that slowly turned into silence. And yet, for every friend they lost, they found new ones. People who understood, who listened, who showed up. Through it all, what kept them grounded were the little moments only they shared. Koji slipping a handwritten note into Shiba's briefcase, "You're my favorite risk." Or the late-night bike rides where they'd scream nonsense into the Tokyo air, laughing until they couldn't breathe, daring the world to notice them. There were times when the fear almost won, when a stranger's glare on the train felt like a personal attack, when family gatherings became emotional landmines, when one bad day made them wonder if hiding would be easier after all. But then, there were the nights under cherry blossom trees, where petals fell like confetti, and for a brief, magical moment, it felt like the universe was cheering them on. Loving each other in Japan wasn't easy. It wasn't soft. It wasn't simple. Some days, it felt like walking a tightrope between hope and heartbreak, between wanting to stay invisible and desperately needing to be seen. But maybe that's exactly what made it beautiful. Because when you choose love, even in the face of fear, that love becomes something unbreakable. And for Shiba and Koji, every risk, every tear, Every awkward, painful, joyful, imperfect step along the way brought them closer to the life they dared to imagine, together. Many viewers felt deeply moved and inspired by Shiba and Koji's love story, proof that love always finds its way. Tell us, what touched you the most? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. What if telling the truth about who you love meant risking everything you've built? Your job, your friendships, your family ties, even your sense of safety. That's the terrifying reality Shiba and Koji faced the night they sat together in their small apartment, staring at the screen, debating whether or not to press upload. For years, their love had existed in the shadows, hidden behind polite smiles at family dinners, erased from social media posts, filtered out of every conversation with coworkers and casual friends. They had become experts at silence, skilled at navigating a society where same-sex couples are expected to stay invisible. Every time they introduced each other as just a friend or avoided answering questions about their relationship status, it felt like they were swallowing small pieces of themselves. One night, after scrolling through social media and seeing yet another engagement post from a straight couple, Shiba turned to Koji and said, "If we keep waiting for Japan to change, we'll be waiting our whole lives." That sentence hung heavy in the air. Koji knew he was right. They couldn't wait for the law or for society to tell them their love was valid. They had to claim it themselves. So they sat down, set up a camera, and began recording. There was no script, no rehearsed speech, just raw emotion, shaky voices, and hearts pounding with both fear and hope. They spoke honestly about their journey, about falling in love, about the years spent hiding. They talked about the mental toll of pretending, the loneliness of erasing their truth, and the decision that had brought them to this moment. When the recording ended, they sat in silence, staring at the video file on their computer. Uploading it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, blindfolded, with no idea whether they would fall or fly. Would people support them? Would their families understand? Would strangers tear them apart online? When they finally pressed publish, there was no turning back. The first few hours felt like holding their breath underwater. Notifications started flooding in. Views climbed faster than they expected. Comments appeared within minutes. Some messages brought tears of relief. Strangers thanked them for their bravery. Young LGBTQ+ people from all over Japan said things like, "I've never seen a couple like you. Thank you for making me feel less alone." But with the love came the hate. Some people called them selfish attention seekers. Others accused them of promoting something unnatural and immoral. Hate comments poured in. People questioned their character, their morality, even their right to exist. They received anonymous messages telling them to stay hidden, to disappear, to stop corrupting the youth. The emotional toll was heavier than they had imagined. Shiba often found himself scrolling through hate comments late at night, heart sinking with every cruel word. Koji struggled with anxiety, questioning if going public had been a terrible mistake. There were nights when they both sat on the floor, holding each other, wondering if they should delete the channel, erase the video, go back to the shadows. But then, just as the fear threatened to swallow them whole, more messages arrived. A student wrote, "I showed your video to my parents, and for the first time, they listened to me." A closeted office worker messaged, "I was thinking about ending my life until I found your channel." Another couple, from a small town in rural Japan, said, "Because of you, we found the courage to come out too." Every single message, every story from someone they'd never met, became a lifeline. A reminder that their visibility wasn't just for themselves. It was for everyone who still felt unseen. The hate didn't stop. The fear never fully disappeared. But over time, the support grew louder than the negativity. Their subscriber count rose, their audience expanded, and suddenly, Shiba and Koji weren't just two guys in love, they were role models, accidental activists. Proof that even in a society slow to accept LGBTQ+ rights, love could still break through. They learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward, even while shaking, even with a lump in your throat, even when the unknown feels overwhelming. Their YouTube channel became more than just content. It became a safe space, a beacon for other LGBTQ+ individuals searching for hope. And with every new video, every shared moment, they sent a clear message to the world: we exist, we love, and we're not going anywhere. For Shiba and Koji, going public was never about being fearless. It was about being real, about showing that even in a place where love like theirs is still questioned, it deserves to be seen. It deserves to be celebrated. And as their story continues, they carry with them the voices of every person they've inspired, proving that sometimes the most powerful form of resistance is simply loving out loud. For 10 long years, Shiba and Koji walked their journey together. Not in the spotlight, but in the quiet corners of daily life. They weren't celebrities. They weren't activists giving speeches. They were just two ordinary men, loving each other in extraordinary ways. In a country where love like theirs was still rarely seen, and even more rarely spoken aloud. Their story began with shy smiles, casual meetups, and the slow, beautiful unfolding of trust. They laughed over bad movie nights, shared late-night ramen, and held each other during life's hardest moments. Birthdays came and went, anniversaries marked quietly between just the two of them, while the world outside continued, mostly unaware of the love growing stronger behind closed doors. But as the years passed, something inside them shifted. They started to realize that their love wasn't something to hide anymore. It was something to celebrate, something to share. Not just for themselves, but for every other couple in Japan, still too scared to dream out loud. In 2018, a decision was made. They wanted something more permanent, something that even borders and governments couldn't erase. The destination? Hawaii, a place thousands of miles from home, where two men could look each other in the eye, say "I do," and have it mean something, both emotionally and legally. The trip wasn't glamorous. No big wedding planners, no fancy venues, just 2 suitcases, a lot of nerves, and hearts pounding with anticipation. Standing on Hawaiian soil, with the ocean as their witness, Shiba and Koji exchanged vows that had been written in their hearts for a decade. When the marriage certificate was placed in their hands, they laughed, they cried, and they held each other tighter than ever before. Shiba later said, with a grin full of disbelief, "We're married. We've got our marriage certificate from Hawaii." But even as they flew back home, reality hit. Japan didn't recognize their marriage. On paper, nothing had changed, but in their hearts, everything had. Rather than feel defeated, they chose something beautiful. That fall, they packed their bags again, this time heading to Wakayama Prefecture, to the ancient Kumano Hongu Shrine, a sacred place where people from across Japan came to pray for love, longevity, and happiness. Under a canopy of autumn leaves, with the scent of earth and moss filling the air. Shiba and Koji stood side by side, wearing simple yet meaningful attire, ready to create their own version of a wedding ceremony. It wasn't about legal documents this time. It was about spirit, connection, and honoring the path they had walked together. They lit incense, whispered silent prayers, and promised to grow old hand in hand, no matter what obstacles the world put in their way. To capture the moment, they filmed a short video, just over 4 minutes long, but packed with meaning. The footage wasn't flashy, it didn't need to be. Shots of them walking along forest paths, laughing, holding hands, stealing glances that said more than words ever could. The mist rising from the mountains, the sound of birdsong in the distance, and the quiet energy of the shrine became the perfect backdrop for their love story. In the video, Koji's voice trembled as he spoke from the heart. "Even though our country doesn't legally recognize us, I believe love isn't something that needs validation from others. After 10 years together, this is a new beginning for us, here at Kumano. I'll stand by my man, and together, we'll grow old." When they shared the video online, something unexpected happened. Messages poured in, not just from Japan, but from LGBTQ+ people across Asia, and even from other parts of the world. Strangers thanked them for being brave, for showing that love like theirs was possible, even in places where acceptance was still a distant dream. Their simple, heartfelt wedding video became more than a personal keepsake. It became a symbol, proof that visibility matters, that small acts of love, can create waves of change. And for Shiba and Koji, the journey didn't end with that ceremony. They continued posting, sharing their daily life, their laughs, their challenges, and their small victories as a married couple, even if the government didn't call them that. Today, when fans and followers scroll through their posts, they see two men, still deeply in love, still showing up for each other, day after day. They've become quiet LGBTQ icons in Japan, not because they set out to be, but because love, especially love that refuses to hide, is powerful beyond measure. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that even without legal recognition, without media headlines, and without a big stage, two people choosing each other every single day can change hearts, one story at a time. So what does their story make you feel? Does it remind you of someone you love, or someone still waiting for their happy ending? What does it really mean to become a family? For Shiba and Koji, that question lingered in the air for years. Between late-night conversations, between silent glances over coffee, and in every quiet moment where the sound of children laughing seemed like a distant dream, they weren't just a couple anymore. They were two hearts longing for something more. A home filled with tiny footsteps, with crayon drawings on the wall, with the unmistakable chaos of parenthood. For a long time, the road ahead seemed impossible. Japan, with its traditional views on family and lingering prejudices against LGBTQ+ couples, wasn't exactly the easiest place to start this journey. But Shiba and Koji, they weren't strangers to breaking norms. They had already come out publicly, already survived waves of criticism, already built a love story the world couldn't ignore, and now they were ready to take the next step, becoming fathers. The adoption process was anything but smooth. Paperwork piled high like mountains they never asked to climb. Endless forms, background checks, character references, even psychological interviews designed to test their readiness for parenthood. There were days when doubt crept in, when it felt like every door was closing before it even opened. But every time exhaustion whispered, "Maybe this isn't for us," they looked at each other and remembered why they started. In June 2024, after months of waiting, worrying, and wishing, the call finally came. A little boy, just 2 years old, born in Japan, abandoned at birth, waiting for a family to call his own. When Shiba and Koji walked into the care center to meet him for the first time, time stood still. He had big, curious eyes, chubby cheeks, and when he reached out, tiny fingers grabbing hold of Shiba's sleeve, it felt like the universe had finally said, "This is yours." The first weeks at home were a beautiful chaos. Sleepless nights, midnight bottle feedings, Shiba fumbling with diapers, laughing at himself after putting one on backwards, Koji humming lullabies off-key, but with so much love it didn't matter. The first time their son smiled genuinely, knowingly, at both of them, it broke them in the best way possible. They cried, together, right there in the middle of the living room floor, holding their child like he was the most fragile and precious thing in the world. One quote from Shiba during this time went viral across Japanese social media. "Family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love." Simple, honest, and it resonated with thousands of people, especially those in the LGBTQ+ community who had long believed that parenthood was a door forever closed to them. As days turned into months, their home transformed. Morning routines shifted from lazy coffee dates to early wake-up calls for formula making. Evenings that once meant editing YouTube videos became storytime sessions, complete with animated voices and silly faces to make their son laugh. And yes, the cameras kept rolling. Their audience, once used to couple challenges and travel vlogs, now tuned in for diaper tutorials, first words, and milestone moments. Their channel evolved from just another gay couple to one of Japan's most visible LGBTQ+ family channels. But with the growing support came backlash. Not everyone was cheering. Some conservative groups launched online petitions, criticizing them for setting a bad example. There were hateful comments, disapproving whispers from neighbors, even awkward moments at local schools when enrolling their son into early childhood programs. Questions like, "Where's the mother?" became all too familiar. And each time, Shiba and Koji answered with quiet dignity and unwavering love. Raising a child as a same-sex couple in Japan wasn't easy. It still isn't. They navigated school systems that weren't built for families like theirs, explained their story to teachers, doctors, and curious parents, all while shielding their son from the ugliness that sometimes waited outside their front door. But every time they heard him giggle, every time he called both of them Papa, they knew it was worth it. Their family became a symbol, not just of love, but of possibility, of change, of what Japan could become if enough people dared to believe that every child deserves a home, no matter who their parents are. Today, as they share their journey with the world, they're not just raising a little boy, they're raising hope. Hope for every LGBTQ+ couple still dreaming of the day they'll hold their child for the first time. And maybe that's the most beautiful legacy of all. What happens when two people's private love story suddenly becomes a public movement? For Shiba and Koji, life was never about chasing headlines. They started as two ordinary guys, filming vlogs, cooking videos, and playful day-in-the-life content, never imagining that one day their channel would become a symbol of hope for LGBTQ+ families across Japan. But life had bigger plans. After going public with their relationship, after showing the world their wedding, after sharing the emotional journey of adopting their son, the couple found themselves standing at the heart of something much larger. Something they never fully expected, but something they felt deeply called to embrace. By 2025, Shiba and Koji were no longer just YouTubers. They had become national voices in the fight for LGBTQ+ family rights in Japan. Their faces started appearing in places far beyond YouTube thumbnails. On national television, on panel discussions, in legal forums, even in government hearings about family law reforms. One particularly unforgettable moment happened during a live talk show aired across the country. Sitting side by side, with their son sitting on Koji's lap, they answered difficult questions from conservative commentators, explained what it means to build a family outside traditional norms, and spoke candidly about the everyday joys and challenges of same-sex parenting. Viewers across Japan watched as Shiba, with his signature calm but unwavering tone, looked directly into the camera and said, "We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the same thing every parent wants, to raise our child in love, safety, and dignity." That clip went viral overnight. Thousands of LGBTQ+ individuals who had once hidden their dreams of parenthood suddenly saw a future they thought was impossible. Young couples, university students, and even middle-aged partners who had kept their relationships secret for decades started writing letters, sending messages, leaving comments. Some messages were simple: "Thank you for making us feel seen." Others, heartbreaking: "We've wanted a family for years, but we thought Japan would never accept us." And then there were the messages from parents, mothers and fathers who once struggled to understand their LGBTQ+ children, now reaching out to say, "Watching you made us realize love is love." Shiba and Koji knew they couldn't stop here. They began partnering with LGBTQ+ advocacy groups, lending their story as real-life proof in campaigns pushing for legal recognition of same-sex parents. They filmed documentary segments, collaborated with human rights organizations, and spoke at universities about inclusion and visibility. One of their most impactful projects was a nationwide awareness campaign titled, "Every Child Deserves Love." Posters of their family appeared in train stations, shopping malls, and even inside government buildings. The image was simple but powerful. Shiba, Koji, and their son walking hand in hand, smiling underneath the words, "This is what family looks like." It wasn't just about their son anymore. It was about changing the conversation, shifting the culture, making space for families that look like theirs. But despite all the media attention, all the activism, Shiba and Koji stayed grounded. In one behind-the-scenes vlog, filmed late at night after a long day of meetings and interviews, Koji sat at their kitchen table, looked into the camera with tired eyes and said, "At the end of the day, we're just two people, raising one small human, trying to teach him kindness." And that, perhaps, is their real legacy. A reminder that progress doesn't always come in loud protests or sweeping legal changes. Sometimes it comes in quiet moments at the dinner table, in bedtime stories. in school lunchbox notes that say, "Daddy and Papa love you." As the sun sets on this chapter of their journey, Shiba and Koji leave us with a message that feels both simple and revolutionary. We don't need a perfect society, just a society where every child has the right to grow up surrounded by love. If this story touched you, tell us how. Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's keep this conversation going. Your voice matters here, because Shiba, Koji, and their little boy aren't done writing history just yet, and neither are we. And that is the love story of Shiba and Koji. A story that proves same-sex love isn't just beautiful, it's powerful, brave, and world-changing. For every LGBTQ+ family in Japan and across the globe, this is a reminder: love wins. Every time. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for walking this journey with us. If this video moved you, if it sparked hope, or even challenged your perspective, we'd love to hear your thoughts, especially from the of you who are the hardest to impress. Was this story enough to touch your heart? Leave a comment, share your voice, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next chapter. Because here, every love deserves to be seen.